And
Right.
so these experiences are given containers to experience themselves. Even now, like the Gede, like it's it's a very fun, interesting expression, because the Gede, it is a time to to revel in the your ancestors, for veneration of your ancestors. However, the way that it shows up is through vices, and it's very vulgar, and it's very sexual, and it's very etc. And so a lot of people look at it and be like, man, that's evil, that's awful, that's wicked. You know what I mean?
We understand absolutely nothing about the creator of existence,
Right, right.
which makes sense, right? The words on a page will never understand anything at all about the mind that put the words on the page. It's just it's too far of a disconnect to even scratch the surface of that. So
Right.
when I say godlessness, I do mean lostness, if you will. I do mean the hyper exaggeration of the selfishness and
Mm-hmm.
only willingness to only serve the animalistic side of self and only serve the temporary compulsive
Mm-hmm.
impulses
Right.
that I feel within.
Expressions of love,
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Expression of Love podcast. It is your host, Soul Expression, indeed. And today I am speaking with Dada, the priestess. Dada is a great friend of mine, as well as my wife's. We've worked together plenty of times on, like her and my wife have worked on music a few times together, even performed together. Um, and we are a part of some of the same circles when it comes to like boots on the ground, uplifting the community, teaching, disseminating information, things like that. Um, and yeah, she's super awesome. So a little from her bio, Dada is an experienced life coach, practitioner, and facilitator. For 13 years, she has coached clients through verifying life breakthroughs and road mapping their soul retrieval, pardon me. Her work is heart-centered, allowing for fast, authentic communication and transformation. And you can follow her at Key Dada Life. I believe that's on Instagram. And yeah, we talk. So, what sparked this conversation was a slight disagreement that we had on, not even a disagreement, but a slight differing of opinion that we had on Facebook about the movie A Woman King or The Woman King. And so we start off the conversation with that, but it actually took a very surprising turn. And I was like, oh, okay. So that's super interesting when she shared some things about how she's personally connected to this movie, The Woman King. So that was really, really cool. We also talked about God and um, spirituality, voodoo, as well as Christianity, or let's say more traditional um, or widespread religious belief systems. And I really hope you enjoy the conversation. I guess there's not much more to say. Make sure that you comment throughout, like and subscribe if you have not already had the chance. And I hope you enjoy. Check it out. 3, 2, 1. Hello, wide world, and welcome back to the Expression of Love podcast. It is your host, Soul Expression, indeed, and I am super happy right now. Why is that, Soul? Well, I'm glad you asked. I'm happy today because today I am sitting across, in Zoom language, from a very dear friend of about 6 years, I think, 6, 7 years, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
The other half of the Ross family, Riders Against the Storm, Dada. What's happening, priestess?
Hey, how y'all doing out there in Zoom land, podcast land?
on the YouTubes,
on the YouTubes,
interwebs. Yeah,
interwebs.
man. No, thank you for coming through. How you feeling?
Great. I really am. I'm really great. I have a 9 month old, and that definitely, I'm working the night shift, as it were, staying up through the night, on and off through the night. And my dog is, going through some medical things, so I'm up through the night. But
Absolutely. Everybody out there, I need you to send up two prayers right now. Okay. Prayer number one, pray for Mbele. Prayer number two, pray for the dog. Okay. What's the dog's name?
yeah, Prince Akeem.
Prince Akeem. Oh, yeah, I knew that. Prince
Yeah,
Akeem. Send up a prayer for Prince Akeem and Prince Mbele. Now, uh, we disagree on something.
yeah. I love
And
it. Hmm.
let me explain a little for the peeps. We were talking okay. So I saw a post, and it's funny because I think he probably just picked up on that there may be some connections here.
Hmm.
Because I saw a post on Facebook that said the Woman King is more important than Black Panther 2.
Hmm. Yeah,
And oh
that was
snap,
my post,
you know
actually.
what was accidental?
Oh, wow.
Didn't even cross my mind. So anyway, so I saw that post, didn't even know who posted it at first.
Uh,
And I had already been exposed to some facts about the peoples that the woman king was loosely based on. And since I was when I saw the post, and again, I didn't think to like scroll back up and look at who posted it at first. I went and posted some things because I was like, I had a little twinge when I saw the post. Like more important than Black Panther 2's. Yeah, okay, it's empowering for sure. The movie has awesome messages and what they call subtexts, absolutely.
mhm,
And anybody who thinks differently just hasn't seen the movie, most likely.
mhm,
But I have my thoughts, and we'll talk about them about the real, the non-fictional Dahomey tribe, nation state, if you will, a kingdom.
mhm,
And so I posted some things on my story, and then Key replied to the story, that comes to your direct messages, DM'd, and was like, hey, they already said some of this stuff. They already pointed some of this stuff out. And so
mhm.
we have we have differing view, not even a disagreement, but just we differ on what we hold as important when it comes
Different
to the
takes on
story.
it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
so we're going to talk about that, and we're probably just going to talk about life afterwards. So hopefully you guys enjoy. And also, before we even get into that, can you explain to the people a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. My name is Dada. I'm one half of Riders Against the Storm. I'm also a spiritual life coach and educator. So I have different clients, mostly women. In the past, I've coached a couple of men, but I've listened to spirits. I just work with women, and I support them through rewiring their outlook so that they can actually stand in a deeper truth as opposed to the stories that they're constantly combating. Um, and yeah, and that's one of my favorite things to do outside of art. It is art, all of my art is about energy and what kind of transformation can happen instantaneously with energy when you understand what energy is and how you can actually craft it. When you understand yourself as a piece of technology.
Right.
So I do a lot of that regardless of the format. So, I live in Austin, Texas. I'm a new mom. Talk about transformation. And yeah, I've been an artist for years. I've been a student for years. I've been a teacher, spiritual practitioner for, golly, maybe like 13 years.
Word, word. God bless all
And
of that for sure.
And to lead into the conversation, I
Mhm.
am also the godmother, the godchild. My godmother is also a woman king in Dahomey
Today,
right now. Yes.
right? So awesome, 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 awesome. Um, it's so interesting, thinking about the you could say contrasts, I guess, the comparisons between the world we live in today and like the writings of the world that existed in the 17, 1600s
Mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm.
beyond, because where there has there have been, countless egregious things that have happened
Mm-hmm.
and just very wrong things that have happened. There's also this immense, undeniable plethora of beautiful things that have happened, right? Like the colonialization of the world happened in horrible ways, and still there's a lot of corruption and things that followed, and yet some of the most beautiful things wouldn't have happened without it,
Yeah.
right?
Hip
It's kind of
hop.
this
Yeah,
this
totally.
this ugliness rises and then beauty rises and then ugliness rises and then beauty is kind of this balancing scale that happens throughout history and keeps
Completely agree.
happening.
Completely agree.
And
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the most exemplary forms of that is in how this movie, I guess, came about, where there's this place in time where a kingdom that had a bunch of cool things about it had a very, very, very bunch also had things that were very, very, very bad about it.
Horrible things about, yeah, totally.
Yeah, and there's this movie that highlights some of the good and makes, I guess, would make it seem to someone who's totally oblivious to the reality that it was a mostly good place, if you will, a mostly good place in time, a mostly good place, king, a mostly good warrior class, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and well, according to the things that I've read about, it just was not. It was not mostly good at all. It was mostly bad, and it was mostly bad consciously and intentionally at in that era.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so those are my, I guess, first kind of thoughts. I want to, we you don't have to. You can kind of jump in when, yeah.
Yeah. So my watching of the film was very cathartic for a couple of reasons. One, like I said, my godmother is a woman king in Dahomey right now. And it led my journey to finding her was about 3 years ago. And I did that because my mother was like, I was helping my mother move out of her apartment. And she's like, I've been meaning to give you something. And she gave me my family tree. And I'm very fortunate that my family tree has several major historical figures from Haiti. I'm Haitian. And so it was easy to document our way all the way back to Africa because even
Mm-hmm,
the very first African that came over was a historical figure.
mm-hmm.
And so it was very easily documented. Um, so my family, I'm a student of history. I had to be. I was raised a patriot, Haitian patriot. My grandfather was. Oh, before we do that, I have to say Bonne Fête Guédé. Since we're going to be talking about ancestries and the dead, it is the Day of the Dead in Haiti. We celebrate it as Guédé.
Today.
Yes. Well, this week. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, this
That's
week.
that's just crazy to me that we end up doing this recording. I mean, it'll come out weeks and weeks from now, but this recording,
Yes, it's during
wow.
the speaking. I have to speak my grandfather's name. He's Fritz Porfet. This is when we're commemorating him. Got an altar outside right now.
Shout out.
Shout out to Grandpa. And speaking of which, there was a beautiful, real quick. It was just a beautiful little spirit moment when I knew my grandfather was here this week. That's why I have to be very careful. So my mom was in the kitchen and she was talking about my family was wild. So my grandmother tried to do some things against my grandfather because she knew some dudes or whatever. It was crazy. Anyway, so my grandfather used to sing this song, Get as I know, get as I know. And so it's about calling out to the spirit, this get a spirit, because someone was trying to kill them. Like, please, like, please watch over me because someone's trying to kill me. And so what I didn't know that. And then when I did a reel on Instagram, the song that I chose was Get It Zaina. And then I played it for my mom. She's like, oh my God, you know what I mean? We had this. So my grandfather was just like, hi guys, which was really sweet. But he was the one who was very adamant that I knew my Haitian history, right? And this is very critical when we talk about the importance of the woman king to me. Many people don't register that because they are learning the histories of the woman king. But that history, much like any history, is long,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. For
Long.
sure.
And so, much like we were saying, colonialism is super ugly, but then some beautiful things came out of it. So that also the woman king is really ugly, and some beautiful things came out of that, right? And let me start by saying that the reason that I felt like the woman king is more important than Black Panther is because Black Panther is absolutely fiction,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it
Mm-hmm.
is very inspirational, and it does help us unlock our imagination and understanding and power about ourselves, about our existence outside of the construct that's been imposed, right?
Okay.
So I think it's incredible. I love the Black. Don't get it twisted. Like, I'm
Nah,
going, I'm
nah, yeah,
dressed,
nah. No,
you
no
know.
diss to Marvel.
No, of course we don't own any of that shit anyway. But anyway, um, I thought I wasn't going to go see Woman King because
Mhm.
of the history
Okay.
and because two white women wrote it.
Right.
So I was like, man, forget that. I'm not going to watch that because I have my own trepidations, but understand that I also had the opportunity to actually speak to my godmother about it. And she's a historian, she's an intellectual, and she's an enthroned queen, queen mother, and then woman king in Dahomey. And we talked about it. And she had her views on it. And she's the one that was kind of like, the history is long. The history is long. We didn't get into it at the time. We did
Mhm.
the other night. But she was like, the history is long. And I was like, okay. And then Spirit, like last week or the week before, whenever I posted that, was just like, check your prejudice and just go see it. Like,
Mhm. Mhm.
you know, and I went to go see it. So back to my lineage, and it'll all meet up. So back to my lineage, um, my grandfather was like, you have to know, you have to know, you have to know. So what I found out in the family tree that I had never really directly known, I guess, is that my great 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 grandfather was Jean-Jacques Dessalines. So Jean-Jacques Dessalines was the general who ousted the French out of Haiti during the Haitian Revolution. He was the one that executed the Constitution. He was second in command to Toussaint Louverture, who was the head of the whole thing. But there was a myriad of people, and that led me to learn about the myriad of the histories and the sophistication of
Mhm.
the Haitian Revolution, right? A lot of people are just, most of the time you hear like it was just like a really great guerrilla warfare. They had a voodoo ceremony and all that, but they're like, they had an international spy network that went from
No,
South
yeah,
America to Europe.
there was organization that would surprise the non-historian. Again, it was yeah.
It
I
was,
don't know many details anymore. I've heard details years and years ago looking into it. I think I was in college when I heard some. I was like, wow, like so it wasn't just a battle of attrition. It was largely a battle of attrition because
mm-hmm,
of technological advancements and certain things, but it was also like it evolved. It evolved into
evolved.
something much more organized.
Right. And
Right.
so what people also misconstrue, which is kind of difficult to comprehend. At the time, race wasn't what race is now, right?
Absolutely. Right.
Right. So uh the Haitian Revolution eventually became about race, because the French kept insisting about race. But in the Haitian Revolution and the revolutionaries of Haiti, it was just about sovereignty.
Right.
It's about you're not allowing to be owned by anyone, which also goes back to their understanding, because many of those Haitians were newly African. So that goes back to their understanding of the world in Africa at the time, back in Dahomey at the time also, right? And so the Haitians also fought in the American Revolution. They fought in the Colombian Revolution, like any of the South American countries, Venezuelan Revolution, any of the South American countries that have blue and red in their flag, that's actually a thank you to Haiti for helping them oust their colonial power so that they can be sovereign nation. And so the Haitian Revolution was really pivotal because the people who fought in, the 30% of the people who fought in and trained Dessalines were Agouti, right?
Okay. Okay.
So um, Toya was, the legend has it, was Agouti from Dahomey, and she was newly captured and came to Haiti. And she was constantly escaping. She was always escaping. She could, get her way out of anything. She could escape. She could fight. She could fight 12 men at a time. Like that was the legend. And so she came across a woman in a field somewhere that was having a baby. And she was just like, I just don't want my baby born in a plantation. And so she helped her birth the baby, but the woman died. And she was just like, please, like, take care of my son. And that son ended up being Jean-Jacques Dessalines, who fought, who helped to marvelize the revolution. But then I was just like, oh, that's amazing. And then I went back to Toussaint Louverture, and I was just like, okay, I'm not directly related to Toussaint Louverture, but I'm directly related to his sister. I'm akin to Toussaint, but his sister is my direct lineage, and they were both descendants of this one king. What was his name? Gauginu. Okay, so they were descendants of Gauginu, and Gauginu came with his wife, and then they had split up, had children, and then they met back up and created Toussaint, created this other woman, and so that his sister is my direct lineage because her son ended up marrying Dessalines, or had a child, didn't marry, but ended up having a child with Dessalines' daughter, and then that daughter had a family with the Kwaku. Kwaku had the family with Porfet. That's my grandfather. Anyway, so a lot. So right. I'm saying
no, but let me cut in real quick because I think that first of all I think that's very beautiful. Because a lot of this probably had to be orally kept together for some time with some sparse of records that could confirm this piece and records that confirm this piece, but largely. Right. The story of it probably had to be orally passed down, 100. And so I think that's very amazing. And when it comes to looking into things like hundreds of years of history, that's often the case. You have to take a piece from some of the French people that just journal, that it was their job to go on these voyages from France to quote unquote the New World and just journal everything and try to be very objective about their journaling. And the English also had these people that had these same jobs. The right. name of the job is escaping me, but scribes, for lack of a better word.
True.
And then the stories of the families were all,
right, very much so. And but like I said, like my lineage is somewhat of an exception because all those figures were historical,
right?
And then Absolutely. The rest of it is like Toya is kind of a legend, but also vaguely confirmed. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. But any case, so then I continue down the path of, and I'm like, well, who's Gauginu? Because it goes to Gauginu, and then it was like, oh,
so now we're in West Africa.
Now we're at the point where we're traveling back to West Africa. And then I was like, okay, well, what land did he come from? He came from the Alada. The Alada is a
Mm-hmm.
kingdom in Benin.
Benin. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Um, and so I was just like, this is okay. This is incredible. So then I go further and read the story even further because even that was documented. So Gao Yinu basically had gotten shipped to Haiti. Well, actually, that's not true. He wasn't shipped. He chose to go because he lost a battle because his uncle or his um, brother was trying to battle him for the throne, or he was next in line for the throne, and they had gone away, and so took it over and something, and they were battling for it, and so his men had gotten taken over, and he decided if his men were going, he was going too. And so he wasn't even in the bottom of the ship; he was on top of the ship. So some of the ships weren't all shackles and chains and stuff like that
Right,
either.
a very little known fact if all you saw was roots.
Yeah, if all you saw was
For real. No, because there's a lot of people's all they saw was roots and then, the not so objective Botanica, Encyclopedia Botanica.
right, and all of that stuff. So there, yeah, the history is wide. So then I was just okay. So then it was very halting to me, because I was always like, oh, I'm the descendants of liberators from colonial rule, and I was like, oh, well, I'm also the descendants of slave traders, right? So I had to like really pause because for me, I was like, well, the woman king for me was important because I had not up until that point really seen a film
Mm-hmm.
that said, no, it wasn't just like the Europeans came in and like took y'all away. Like, you did this. You did this. And one of my uh calls, like being under my godmother, she's all
Mm-hmm.
about spiritual repatriation. She's like, you can come back to Africa, but your spirit reformed? Do you understand what it means to, and you never have to come back to Africa for that to happen, but do you know what it means to re I don't want to use the word remember, but what it means to reconfigure who you think you are or what you think you've been in.
Okay.
If you're going to align yourself back to this, like, are you going to look at yourself completely,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to kind of get yourself out of this victimhood? And then also like her responsibilities, like if we got you, if we we sent you, we have to bring you back,
Mm-hmm.
you know. If so the spiritual parturition is twofold. It's just like there's the configuration reconfiguring of that, but then also there's the responsibility of the continent, of the people who participate, to be like, well, we have to bring you back then.
Word.
And so we have to re redesign our thinking, and that's heavy work, but that's a lot of the work that she's doing.
Yeah.
And also, when I spoke to her the other day, one of the things that was very confirming to me, that I also kind of, they prettied it up in the movie for sure, because it's Hollywood and whatever, they got to make it palatable for people, but it is the warrior spirit that's like, gotta go clean it up. It is the warrior spirit. Like, I feel like what's her name, Viola Davis. Yeah, the whole movie
Okay.
was retarded because Viola Davis is also from the same town I'm from. She grew up in a little town called Central Falls, which is 1 mile by 1 mile inside of a town that I used to live in called Pawtucket in Providence, Rhode Island. I used to
Okay.
I used to be an actor back in the day. I used to do a lot of theater back in the day. I still do acting, but I used to do theater back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was really like right behind her. So I would I went to Rhode Island College and I would see her picture on the wall, and she was like a star before anybody knew who she was. And so that was always like a guiding post for me, like, oh, Viola, Viola. And then I would go out into the community and start doing theater. And then people would be like, Viola, Viola, Viola. And then eventually, when I was in college, I went to go see her on Broadway before she blew up, all this stuff. So it was very cathartic to me. It was a lot of me,
Right.
a lot of me in the movie.
So first of all, I respect that. I'm glad that that's clarified on such a deep level because um when there's such a personal touch
Mm-hmm.
to art or artifact, this in this case art because it's a movie,
Mm-hmm.
of course it's going to feel and be in reality really important, right? And so that's been clarified for me, and here's, I guess, why without the clarifications and
Mm-hmm.
beautiful story, by the way, uh what's bothersome for me, is in watching the movie you get the sense that there was a modern um reverence for human life at that time. And then when and if you read about this particular kingdom, as well as the Oyo, who they were beefing with for centuries, neither one of them really cared about human life like that. And that's from the royalty down to the captives, if you will. There's sort of alleged eyewitness accounts of 400 to up to 4,000 human beings sacrificed just for ritual purposes. A lot of them captive, and says things like many of them captives, which means not all of them, which means it's some of their own. Children and women, as well as pregnant women, no exception.
Mm-hmm.
Um, After kings passed away or passed on their throne, there would be annual ceremonies where like 800 beheadings would happen.
Mm-hmm.
um and then the fact about that their entire economy was largely based in not just the selling, but also the being paid to go inland and capture from unsuspecting people, right? You have the more Arabian invasion inland coming from the top, and you have the west, the just straight up African coming from the west,
Mm-hmm.
inland, and just yeah, and just sort of having their way, taking as many people as possible, especially children, especially young boys, and selling them in. And whenever there's warfare, there's a lot of rape. That's just human history, even to today with today's technology and all of that. Whenever
Mm-hmm.
there's war and there's sort of boots on the ground, rape is abound, and that was happening a lot to these little boys, and obviously happening to the women.
Mm-hmm.
And so getting that, watching the movie again, which I'm very impressed with a lot of the movie. I don't say don't go see the movie because
Right.
it's dope. Not
Mm-hmm.
only the acting and the cinematography, but also again a lot of the subtext and a lot of the sort of determination. These subtexts that
Mm-hmm.
are in the movie. And then Viola Davis is the GOAT. She plays every role like it's her last, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but you get the feel that in real life, if you will, there was a genuine care about the sanctity of each individual human made in the eyes of the creator. And since that really doesn't seem like it was actually there. And what I mean is like deliberately, like they seem to want to have made it seem like these were nice or conscious people.
Mm-hmm.
Conscious, I'm using the word conscious loosely here. Conscious people, and they don't seem like they were. You know,
Mm-hmm.
if the history is not full of lies, then they weren't
Mm-hmm.
conscious.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And I think they give a bad name to the Ifa. I think they gave a bad name to um what I used to believe, like in elementary school, about Africa, and Africa's role in the 14 through 18, 1900s. Yeah, 1900s. And you know, the fact that they fought a war for 20 years to in order to keep their economy exactly what it is and was, which is going, capturing unsuspecting people, selling them, as well as selling their own, often separating women from newborn children if the women weren't, you know, all about their thing, selling their children directly into their own, the homie children.
Mm-hmm.
Not only to the New World, but maybe to the kings or maybe to the whatever. Some of these kings having over 300 wives, like the Chinese, like some of the Chinese emperors. Like, why do you need 300? God, Jesus. 300? um, but that's the extent, right? Of I don't have a beef with the movie itself. I have a beef with the portrayal of this is a depiction of these people, and we're using real names of a real kingdom, and Gezo is a real king, in celebration, not well, in recognition of his passing. They did lots and lots of killings. um and the just the blatant lie of someone internally having the idea to switch the economy over to palm oil. It's not the case, and it's put off as if that's the case. So,
Right.
you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
I mean, yeah, I think it's important for people to know, one, it's a fictitious historical recount. Um, and it does do it a great disservice. But I was really fortunate early on, because I was pan Africanist. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Everything had to be fucking Africa. God damn it. Fuck that. We're going to Africa. And it was a desire of mine for always. And this is very interesting that this storyline is what got me to Africa. I was like,
Right.
you're gonna get to Africa for real. I went to Benin 3 years ago, but this kind of ugly is what's gonna get you to Africa, not this pretty
Right.
glory shit, which is very interesting to me. Um, and so I was fortunate enough. There was two things that really kind of like got me to what you're talking about early on. I had an elder one time. I was in a spiritual space. They call they in Vodou they call what you call it. My brain is still
Ceremony?
sleepy. No. It's the space in a Humfor. And so in Brooklyn, and I remember the elder being like, "Listen," I was just like, pan beef, psyched up about Africa, and traditions and all of that, and he was just like, "Listen to me, don't." What did he say? He said, "Don't basically like, don't believe the hype. Don't sit up here and think all people in Africa were good people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we were not all kings and queens.
Mm-hmm.
There was some, and even that wasn't, you know what I mean? He was basically like, if there's niggas stealing and robbing now, there was niggas stealing and robbing then."
Right. All right, all right, all right, all right. With all of that understood, can we please make some room? For it is time for the expression of rhyme. That's right. It is now time for me, Soul Expression, to interject a rap verse into this episode, touching on one or more of the topics my guests and I are engaged in. Like and subscribe if you have not already had the chance. Comment below your favorite line from this segment, and listen, if you will, to this verse. Man, let's be spot on. Talking about making plans gets the plot gone. Uplifting the minds of man lets me trot on through the fact I don't know myself, even with Ancestry.com. So picture living in total mystery of your history, feeling like you doing it fictitiously. It doesn't excuse the bigotry we tend to see in niggatry, but it puts the vicious things and misery into perspective. We don't have a path to clarity about our respective lineages and heritage that clings to sections of our DNA that help us keep our place in perception of a world that ain't nice nor fair to human being, but still has the capacity for a woman king to raise the hearts of many while slashing the hearts of more in a time where all that matters is the art of war. Not many truths about the history of populations preserved and kept afloat can do more than postulation when it comes down to a people that through observation fell short of passing down their knowledge out of obligation. But we don't serve the one true God for our bloodlines. We serve by any means we can on the front line. No substitution, graven image in the subconscious mind shall be permitted subliminally or otherwise. The most important thing to me as a Black man is dropping the obsession with race and the past, man, to actually learn from the past and connect the lessons to the actions I promote. That's a fact. And shout out Dada for today's conversation. It inspired these lyrics I've thrown into rotation. So pass your favorite line around like it's a blunt. Show them how we get down on the expression of love. And now, without further ado, we can make it back to your regularly scheduled programming. Right.
In Haiti, there's a phrase that goes, "Depuis en Guinée, nègre which is since Africa, niggas been killing niggas like since Africa. Nobody wants to really acknowledge that, but that's the truth. It's like niggas have been killing niggas since Africa. You know, so when people are just like, we got to stop doing this, like God rest his soul, take off. I'm just like, yo, this is not about colonialism. Colonialism didn't make us do that.
Right. Right. Rest in peace.
Take off. Yeah, and Nipsey.
Rest in peace, take off. But you know, Nipsey, same thing. It's like
same thing.
You're something interesting was said on Matt Hopper's podcast when he was interviewing Joel Ortiz and Crooked. King Crooked. He's Joel was like, you know, to some people, you coming back and putting on for your hood looks like you doing something to uplift the community. To another person, they see you rocking a chain and driving a certain car while you're doing that, and they see it as stunting on your hood. And, you know, sort of crabs in a barrel mentality versus inspiring, you know, I'm inspired to be like you one day mentality. And I think that's very true. I think like the Native Americans used to say, there are two wolves in everybody, and the one that wins is the one you feed. Very big paraphrase, but hopefully they understand what I'm saying. I know you get it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very, if you will, it's very philosophically interesting to me, the fact that all people have great potential for good and great potential for evil, and neither one of them is your whole life story.
Right. That's right.
If you come in and you never do good, then you have no heart. But if you come in and you never do bad, you have no brain. You have no mind.
Right. That's right.
You know what I'm saying? Show me a man that's never lied. Show me a man that's never had ridiculously high-level lustful thoughts about somebody else. It's not his woman. You know what I'm saying? You won't find one. So, except for me. So
why we're on your podcast.
Yes. Except for moi. But yeah. So I think I might have cut in a little bit.
Yeah, you know, and it's really dope too, because bringing up the First Nation people, because I remember posting something like that about the responsibility of Africans to clean things up years ago. And there was a First Nation, I want to say he was Mexican. And he was just like, he agreed. He was just like, people like to, blame Europeans for everything. But just like, there were nations I belonged to, not, my people, they were brutal people. They were brutal people. And so like the whole thing is like people can have this utopian idea of us fixing everything and getting together and unifying and all of that. And I'm just like, I think that's a beautiful sentiment. I strive for unification. I just also don't have this unrealistic idea that we're all going to do it all at the same time, and it's all, just like, it don't matter. Like even if you see that in the Woman King film, or even in Black Panther film, like there's always going to be a nigga. There's always going to be a nigga that's going to be like, I don't care.
Look at the 12 disciples of
That's
Christ.
right. That's right.
It's always going to be that one.
It's always going to be one. It's going to be
And
like,
then who are we surrounded by? The Romans. So it's always going to be one in the good clique. You know how many there are outside of the good clique.
That just that it creates the aperture, right? That's just real. Like there's no because we live in a free will zone. There's no
right.
way.
And freedom comes with responsibility. You know what I'm saying? What people don't, how do I say this? People think that we naturally yearn for freedom. It's not true. It's a very honorable notion, but it's not true about human beings. Human beings yearn to be taken care of. Why is that? Because there's no love like a mother's love. And what does a mother do? Take care of you. And so when you start moving into I take care of myself mode, there's something that yearns to be taken care of. And so all of this, what they call fetishizing Africa and hoping that we all can sort of kumbaya together under the Pan-African umbrella, and sail back and then create wild king, just to create the utopian, regime that we all kind of wish would be there to take care of us. That would take massive hard work, both internally and externally.
100%. I mean,
you know what I'm saying?
Like,
and when it comes to the hip hop music, we're gonna have to stop rapping about stupid shit, even if that's what you grew up in. Right? We're going to have to stop, because music. So here's the thing about music, right? And yeah, rest of this is no disrespect to anybody that's been caught up by the real enemy, which is an energetic enemy. But the thing about music is music gets to you faster than movies and books and and you make music, so you know the power.
Right.
When 50 dropped many,
yeah.
My little, from the suburbs, the nice suburbs, not the suburbs in Cali, the suburbs on the East Coast. Okay, we got different suburbs.
Right. Yep.
Was riding. I didn't enact violence on anybody, but if I was surrounded by violence every day, I definitely would have. Music changes you. It has power, and we're going to have to stop contributing to our own demise. You know what I'm saying? And like you said, blaming the white boy.
Right, and it's a tough conversation because, like you were saying, being taken care of, there's an infantilization that is there when we are always kind of pointing outward to an enemy, and can't really stand in our own like responsibility. And I think that Takeoff's death is reanimating that conversation for people right now, which is good. I've seen a number of rappers be like, we can't do this anymore. I'm just like, okay, I don't know what that means. Like back in the day, that meant we were going to get on a track and talk about self-destruction, and we was going to do some other things. And I don't know what that means. Because this is a different era of creative control that we're in. And so what I think is, as far as music goes, what I think is like really, really important is that we kind of like register, a lot of people just don't understand frequency either. Like they kind of do, but they kind of don't. And Black people, it's even more serious because we're melanated. We're able to take on energy and vibration at an intense,
at least differently.
at
Right.
least differently. Like it's like I remember doing a experiment in school, and you had a black piece of paper and a white piece of paper, and she put a light bulb over it and it made it twist. And she was like, why? Because the black paper is absorbing
Mm-hmm.
energy and the white paper is deflecting energy, so it creates emotion. And we could learn from that. But anyway, um so it's a nutritional, there's a nutritional aspect to it. So the music that we take in as black people affects us, like it's like junk food, like that's everybody in general, but definitely for us, especially if it's about us, we take it in a very, like you were saying, you was riding around like, yeah. I'm like, that's because nutritionally you were taking that in and started to become this thing, or feel this thing anyway, felt it on a visceral level. So I think that's really crucial. And I feel like that's why the film for me was so imperative, because
Mm-hmm.
I was hoping, because Black people didn't want to hear me say that. They didn't want to hear me like, we're in this. Some people understood that,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot of people still want to be like, yeah, colonials. I'm like, they couldn't have done it without us. Like, let's just deal with that.
But 90 to 95% of the Africans that made it over here to the quote unquote new world sold by other Africans. 90 to 95%. Some estimate 98%.
That's
Why?
just,
Because the Europeans weren't numerous enough, nor were their military strong enough to just go inland.
their guns weren't strong enough when they first came.
Right. Well, not only that, we were trading. They both sides had guns.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And North Africa was, look, West Africa was a force to be reckoned with, but North Africa wasn't no hoes either.
No,
You know what I'm
definitely
saying?
not.
The Muslim regime, most of the Muslim regime was African, not. And what is Arab anyway? If not African, you got to be somewhat African to be an Arab.
Right.
There's no such
And
real thing as an Arab.
let's not forget that, Europe was ruled by Africans for 700
Right,
years.
right. The Moors. Right. Yep.
Like, we
Who
bring a
built
lot of
them
pride
cathedrals?
in
So,
that. So like this notion of, it's because, and I also say this too, is it's like the African American, the African of the Americas is a different, living a very different reality than anybody else in the world,
yeah.
because they have been they are pulling together their sense of self with ghost notes. They were
Right.
taken away and given away,
Right.
and don't have any, they're trying to piece it together.
No, and here's the thing, Key. So are the white Americans,
100%.
right? Because the basically the I'm reading this book. I have it right here. Black redneck, black. Oh, let me unblur my. Oh, you can see it here.
I can see
Black
it right
rednecks and white liberals. Thomas Sowell.
here.
The foremost mind of our time, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
At least when it comes to analytics and analyzing history and economics and things.
Mm-hmm.
And he shows very blatantly that the culture that's in the Black inner city is actually a culture that comes from the Scottish and the Celtic fringes of northwestern Britain, when Britain was spelled Briton, basically England before it was actually a country.
Mm-hmm.
And the people that migrated and settled in the South were those people. And let me read just this little bit from here, because it's so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Listen to this. These people are creating a terrible problem in our cities. They can't or won't hold a job. They flout the law constantly and neglect their children. They drink too much. Their moral standards would shame an alley cat. For some reason or other, they absolutely refuse to accommodate themselves to any kind of decent, civilized life. Listening to that, you can see your average inner city Black person. No disrespect to my inner city Black folk.
The way
But listening to
they're
that,
described. Yeah.
yeah, you see the sort of macro of inner city Black people. Who
Mm-hmm.
were they actually talking about? This was said in 1956 in Indianapolis, not about Blacks or other minorities, but about poor whites from the South, because the South also had a great migration from the South to the North
Right.
post emancipation, post Civil War.
Right. And so what's interesting about that, as I grew up in the Northeast. I grew up in Providence, Rhode Island.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in New York and I grew up in Providence, Rhode Island.
I'm from
And
Delaware.
yeah, and my hood had a lot of Irish, lots
Mm-hmm.
of Irish, big Irish Day Parade, all of that. And if you've ever been around Irish, you know for sure those are niggas. If you don't know that, you have not been around Irish people.
Yeah.
Irish people are niggas. They're white niggas, and of course they were indentured servants, uh,
Mm-hmm.
alongside
Right.
with the initial group of Africans also that were also all indentured servants.
Right.
And the other, what's really, really, really hard for people to deal with. This is gonna fuck people up. The precedent for slavery
Mm-hmm.
being legalized
Mm-hmm.
in the United States was actually due to a black man. Was
I mean,
actually due to a
is
black man.
slavery a white invention?
Slavery was not a white
Is
invention.
it, you know what I'm saying? According to calculations, the white boy wasn't even here before slavery.
It's a horrible truth, but if we're talking about getting free, that's the truth that will get us free. Is our deep responsibility for why we where we are where we are. That does not discount the horror of racism. That does not discount the horror of colonialism and the brutality of what happened to Black Americans and the erasure of
Right.
the impact
Right.
psychologically.
Forced illiteracy, all of that. Right. Exactly.
It does not erase any of that.
Right.
The deeper power, like Dr. Jewel Pookrum says, like all power to yourself, all power to yourself. You know what I mean? You have to understand that if you got yourself here, you can get yourself out.
Well,
But
and
you
well,
have to
so that's
acknowledge
the thing, right?
it.
Is it doesn't to know that we are not a just benevolent peoples and that we have an equal capacity for evil to white people, and Europe just by a bunch of geographical as well as educational advantages ended up winning the war for the world at first. Right? They lost at first and then they won, and they still are winning today. But
Mm-hmm.
knowing that you're right, it doesn't erase the no one's guiltless, right? They're guilty of what they actually did in history, but knowing the facts, it contextualizes American slavery.
Right.
And we've lost the proper context of American slavery. Hence, we can have no collective gratitude for the freedoms that we are afforded in this country because we keep playing the blame game. Oh, redlining. Oh, Jim Crow South. Oh, this and that, or Jim Crow time. Excuse me. They didn't want interracial marriage, and we keep playing the blame game, and
Mm-hmm.
we don't. And I, like I said, I think a lot of that comes from a lack of real authentic gratitude for being in a free. This is look, if people don't travel too, man, they just don't know you are free
You're
here.
free. You're
You are
free.
free here, and it doesn't mean your childhood or your situation can't be hard.
Mm-hmm.
It can be extremely hard, and no one wants to take that away from you. But you can criticize your government and go to sleep at night.
Mm-hmm.
You can enterprise
Yeah.
in anything, in sex work, in library, in passing newspapers out. You can enterprise in any form of business pretty much,
Mm-hmm.
right? You can own a weapon without permission in a lot of states. You're free here, but freedom comes with responsibility, and people don't want to be responsible
Well,
for.
yeah, that's the whole thing. Is it's like
Yeah.
people don't people don't realize they're American. Like
Right.
when there are certain things that I'm just like, oh, like everyone's just like black, but then it's like, but you're a black American. Like I grew up with people who weren't black Americans. I grew up with my family having to leave because, they were being targeted by, the secret police of of dictators. You know what I mean? My great great grand my great great my no my great my great grandfather was exiled and was trying to leave because he spoke against the dictator and was trying to leave. My grandfather was actually trying to get him to the Brazilian embassy so he could leave, and they caught him and they shot him dead.
Mm.
And so, you know, Black people have, I mean, not Black people, but Americans have a
Mm-hmm.
degree of freedom also. But the thing, let me go back to what you were saying about Irish folks. I
Yeah.
have a class that I teach called The Truth Telling of Whiteness. And so the premise of it is the fact that there is no space that I've been a part of. That being said, I do have been a part of a lot of spaces where Black people and First Nation people are trying to be responsible,
Right,
are trying
right,
to
right,
be
right,
like,
right. Not to imply that it's absent, but
right.
it's largely absent in the places where it's needed most. But not to say that it's completely absent and
Yeah,
everybody.
and also it looks a lot of different ways because a lot of people have different concepts about being responsible. Some people think it's largely financial, like we have to get ourselves together financially so we can stop being dependent and da 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 da. And some people feel like it's spiritual repatriation. Some people it looks a lot at we're just not monolithic. No one on human planet thinks
Right.
like anybody else. So,
I'm like, bring those five fingers together. But okay.
but it again, we'll see. That can happen. All things are possible. So
Yeah.
Um, but I do this class because there is an acknowledgement that has to take place that if there was a degree of erasure and identity fuckery that took place for First Nation and Black people, there was also a degree that happened to white folks because they have to help keep this together. So you don't. So one of the things that I tell them is like, do you even know who you are? Would you know who you are without the context of you being a colonial ruler?
Right.
Do you have any concept of who you are without the shame and the guilt and the silencing that and the fear that you carry about retaliation from other people? And for
Anybody. Right.
me,
Mm-hmm.
from a lot of people, and for me, that that is the foundation of war. Like we can't
Yeah.
end war if if either side is constantly on guard, on threat, waiting for you to retaliate because no one wants you to just admit and clean up the fact that we did that, da, 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 because then it just keeps going and going and going instead of everyone just being like, look, you fucked up, we fucked up. Let's just start over.
Let's actually be free. And that's what
Let's
I
actually,
meant about the contextualization of American slave. Well, let's say American transgression
mm-hmm,
on behalf of American people, because white people were also transgressed upon. It was in America. It was first of all, racism is what stupidity is permanent, is a
mm-hmm,
human thing. Racism is a branch off of a couple of different branches off of stupidity,
mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm,
Willing non-truth, if you will.
mm-hmm,
Racism, it popped up and it went super duper extreme. And then when it died down, nobody was, or let's say today, nobody wants to let it go.
mm-hmm,
Nobody wants to put it back in its original bubble of just regular old stupidity.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And we have all of these social phenomenons, cancel culture, the invention of, not even invention, but the hyper usage of words like conspiracy theorists and misinformation and disinformation.
mm-hmm,
The love hate relationship that everybody has with social media, right? They
mm-hmm.
love that they can share what they want to be true, but they hate that other people have other perspectives. They
They can
hate that
share.
shit,
Yeah.
right? The immediate labeling of public figures and political figures.
Mm-hmm,
Um, dare I say, there's very little to no evidence that Donald Trump is a racist person. Although his character needs a lot of work, he does not have a beautiful character, in my opinion.
mm-hmm,
But he doesn't seem to be a racist person.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but all of these social phenomena, the transgender stuff that is ridiculous and huge and gets younger and younger every year. And I don't mean people suffering from gender dysphoria. I mean the actual push to indoctrinate children from the adults. That's what I'm talking about.
Right.
That piece of the all of these social phenomena that point to the same general thing of a lack of reverence for truth, a lack of reverence for truth itself, right? And a little bit of godlessness. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I'm going to push back to you on that one.
Okay.
So for me, God is doing all of it.
Okay.
For me, God is doing all of it. And so like it's my philosophical take is the horrors, the all of it is God.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is because we are God.
Right.
And the reason I say that is because even in biblical text, like if you look at the book of Job,
Okay.
the devil needs permission
Right.
to enact.
Absolutely.
The devil fell from the space God existed in, you know? And so there's a infinite play that is we describe it as horrific, even like if you even want to step back from that,
Mm-hmm.
we describe it as horrific. And so, or we describe it as however we describe
Yeah,
it.
depending on what we're focused on, it's either beautiful or very ugly. Right.
Right. And it's all an expression of an experience of us trying to find of the infinite experiencing itself as many ways as it possibly can to
Right.
find, in Vodou, we we speak about life being a dance. That's why there's a lot of dance in Vodou. We
Mm-hmm.
speak about the chaos. In a
Mm-hmm.
deeper level, there's the Vodou quantum space, and so there's chaos, and the peace comes from allowing the knowing that this is chaos. That the whole universe is chaos. It's clashing and it's flashing and
Right.
it's swirling and it's burning and it's da 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 da.
It is.
And the peace comes from being able to tai chi with it, if you will. It's to be able to dance with it and to let it consume you and to not be. That's why I love Vodou. Vodou, when people talk about possessions and all these different things, some depending on your worldview, people are like that's not something coming onto you; it's something coming out of you. And
Right.
so these experiences are given containers to experience themselves even now, like the gede, like it's it's a very fun, interesting expression, because the gede, it is a time to revel in the your ancestors, for veneration of your ancestors. However, the way that it shows up is through vices, and it's very vulgar, and it's very sexual, and it's very etc. And so a lot of people look at it and be like, man, that's evil, that's awful, that's wicked, you know what I mean? But like you were saying before, like about perspectives, it's like the other perspectives is like, no, that's what I came here to be human for. I came to feel this, and I came to have these pleasurable experiences, and to what is vulgarity? What does it feel like to be able to be like, man, fuck that bitch or whatever?
Right.
Like that experience on macro, micro, and then that experience
Yeah.
on a micro, like it's horrible. But because we're such a speck in it, we don't necessarily see, like even going back to the story of the Women King, like it's such a broad, long
Right.
story
Right. 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 Right.
of,
I can respect. I think I get
you
everything
get
that.
what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
they're the perhaps I join you in saying the ungodliness is like the lack of awareness that is
Mhm.
the lack, the disconnect from the understanding of the allness
Yes.
that we're
So
experiencing.
so I actually don't I don't think we disagree. I think you may have worded what I said differently. Because existence is here second to God, right?
Right.
Existence, we can kind of conceptual, we may not understand it fully, but we can kind of conceptualize, we understand a lot about it. We understand absolutely nothing about the creator of existence,
Right. Right.
which makes sense, right? The words on a page will never understand anything at all about the mind that put the words on the page. It's just it's too far of a disconnect to even scratch the surface of that. So
Right.
when I say godlessness, I do mean lostness, if you will. I do mean the hyper exaggeration of the selfishness and only willingness to only serve the animalistic side of self and only serve the temporary compulsive impulses
Right.
that I feel within, and that's what I mean by godlessness is because there's levels to relating to the divine, right? There's
Right.
prudence and strictness on, let's say, the laws of the Bible, but then there's also experimentation and objective science, you could say, done properly. Let's assume done properly, that God wouldn't, I don't think God keeps love away from people if they don't have an exclusive belief system, right?
Right.
God doesn't say, well, I'm going to be less in you because you don't have this exclusive ass belief system. God's love, God's grace, and existence itself is equal and available to all. And I think the lack of education, understanding, and guidance, right, is what contributes to people like me who lean a little bit prudent, to use words like godlessness in that way. But I don't. I'm a meditation coach. I can't. I couldn't possibly be authentic and think that the Bible or there's one way to divinity. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? There's
Absolutely.
um,
Absolutely.
or or
Absolutely.
or or even say that God isn't the creator of evil deeds. Yes, evil deeds have to have God there first. Yet it is possible for me to think to think about and contemplate just how powerful God is in this one way. And I think this should interest you. It will interest you, I'll predict.
Yeah.
God is so powerful that he can create the earth and human beings, not separate himself from the earth and human beings, and still give the earth and human beings free will, or let's say still give human beings free will,
That's right.
because he's just that powerful.
Right.
He's just that guy.
Right.
And they'll never understand it, but he'll also give them a couple sets of instructions. Some of them will be religious, some of them again will come through experimentation and experience and just living and the wisdom that comes with time. And these instructions, and he will judge you, right? I think the biggest thing when it comes to dangerous habits that we form in groups is the fear, is the shirking of the fact that God judges. Well, I'll say fact because it's my opinion that that's a fact, if you will. I
Right.
believe God judges, and I believe that that's very evident in a lot of people's stories. And and I also believe that there is an afterlife, as you said. Ancestors can't be ancestors without an afterlife, right? They wouldn't
Right.
be. So a lot of ancestors talk to people. You communicate with them. I've had things happen that I feel like was communication, but I couldn't confirm. I'm a little object. I'm a little 3D with my objectivity, if you
Right.
will. But I don't deny the existence of an afterlife and the probability that there may be multiple and some that you don't want to experience and you can't connect what you do here with what's coming next. Disconnect, excuse me. You can't disconnect what you do here with what's coming next. And so that's why I lean a little prudent when I say things like godlessness, talking
Mm-hmm.
about some of the evils of humans, because it's not that I'm guiltless, but I try my best to, well, I try my best most of the time to, what am I
Right on.
saying? I'm perfect.
Yeah.
I try my best most of the time to adhere to the instructions
Right.
because I'm being judged. I'm being
Yeah.
watched. I'm being loved. I'm being
Mm-hmm.
loved. Your mother loves, your mother judges you.
That's
Don't
right.
do that. That's
Mm-hmm.
not like you. That's like Billy. Don't be like Billy. Billy's a dumbass. Mom
Mm-hmm.
judges you. So of course, God judges you.
Right.
It's my
Well,
stance.
so, you know, philosophical
Right, right. Deep dives.
deep dive. So, okay. So, for example, there are different schools of thought, and all of it's God. That's the whole thing. Like that's
Right.
what you're saying, and I completely
And
agree.
we agree totally on that
We
point.
completely completely agree on that, and I think also I agree because, for example, like there was the feminist uh, worldview used
Mm-hmm.
to be very anti like hijab, for
Mm-hmm.
example,
Mm-hmm.
right? That prudence, that veil, that demure
Right.
uh, ideology. Maybe like those women are oppressed, da, 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 until Muslim women were like, who are you to decide what is freedom? Who are you to tell me that being demure and being veiled somehow makes me less free than you because you got your coochie out? Like, okay, cool, you got your coochie out.
Right.
And you're wild or whatever, but that doesn't mean I'm less free just because I choose or I'm existing as, this more demure reality of my of a reality, like, you know what I mean? And so now, the feminist ideology had to be like, oh well, I guess you're right, like women can't be telling women what to do, like that's not this, that doesn't make sense.
Right.
um, and so but then also like on the other side be like, you're, what's wrong with you, like put some clothes on, like those extremes can exist, but they all are necessary. They're all
Right.
completely necessary. It's like in Vodou, they almost on purpose, there is no text,
Okay.
right? Because their worldview is that life is happening right now, like God is happening right now. So if I write it down, not that they didn't have the capacity to, I'm locking something in. And what
Mm-hmm.
needs to happen right now, and how God wants to show up right now, and the new rules and the new ways of being that have to happen right now. Although things are universal, there are certain laws that are just universal. They're not going anywhere. What, you get back what you put out, for example. Um, that's just universal, that because there has to be the dance. But just like, you don't need to write that down. You should come to that conclusion if you're listening right now, if you're present right now, if you're in tune, if you're tapped in right now, you're gonna get that. And I think also like the woman can kind of, they just slid by it, but they also said it in there like, Ifa told us not to do this,
Mm.
did it anyway. I there's a movie about the called Traces of the Trade, and that I show in the white truth telling of whiteness, where the white people are trying to justify slavery and be like, well, that's what everybody was doing then. Like, we can't really judge them. Da, da, da. And then she takes them on a tour from Rhode Island, which was one of the largest, if not the largest slave port in America. Most people don't know that. I think it was the South, but it was actually the North.
No, yes. New York, Rhode Island, but
Huge.
then immediately you kind of sort of made your way through Philadelphia all the way down.
That's right.
Anyway, sorry.
No,
Mm-hmm.
no, it's fine. Yeah. So she took them from Rhode Island to Cuba to Africa, and by the time they got to Africa and they went to the slave caves and all of that, he was like, he could feel it. He was like, no, they knew this was wrong, and they did it anyway, right? And so my general, there's no way to understand God. I think we're all
Right. It's
there's no
there
way to
isn't.
understand
There isn't.
why and how this is how it is or whatever. But like,
It'd be like Harry Potter trying to understand J.K. Rowling. It's not going. There's
yeah, that's a reference beyond me, but I get what you're saying.
Oh, she wrote. She's the author.
Oh, she's the writer. My bad. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know what. Okay, I got it now.
Yes. Yes.
So, I think also like, yeah, like in there's a certain context that I just love the dance of it, and I think that's why I gravitate towards Vodou, because there's just this reality. It's like Vodou acknowledges all of you,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like there is a very pristine part of you that is very prudent and is very obedient and is very disciplined, right?
Right.
And this part of you that's just wild. You know what I mean? It's just wild. And the ass gotta shake and the booty gotta pop and you know what I mean? And the alcohol has to go and the whatever. And some of those things are stronger in other people than they are in other people.
And well, and if I can just a little bit, that
Mm-hmm.
is what people get lost on when people start talking in this way about human nature, is the beast is different sizes, shapes, and has different needs in every new person, right? The beast and the white wolf, if no, that's people don't think that's people gonna think that's what they call it, internalized racism.
Racism, right? Right.
People going. The good side also is a different. The good beast. I'll just call it that. The good beast also is different size, different shape, and has different needs in every new human. And people
Right.
don't want to acknowledge that about themselves
That's
because they
right.
don't want to look closely at, what are the chaotic parts of me that I still want to bring some order to, or that I still want to bring at least some ordered acknowledgement of, right? So I can know when I get this feeling not to do such and such action because I know what the result's going to be. All right, I did the action ever since childhood, so I know it's bad. But I keep
Mm-hmm.
repeating these same patterns. How do I? People don't want to take that particular deep dive. I
Right.
think that's important. Yeah.
I think that's crucial, and I think one of the to wrap up my point, because I know we're running out of time, but is that what I love about Vodou ceremonies or certain African cosmology ideologies is that, okay, you want to feel that the lawlessness in that worldview is that there's no container. Okay, maybe you do want to get wild. Can we give it a container so that it's not running amok? Right? So like there's a ceremony and you get to run amok, you get to let that out, you get to let that out in a container, and
Mm-hmm.
then we're done.
Right.
Right? It's like in the Dagara, Sabon Fusome explained teenagehood so beautifully,
Mm-hmm.
in the sense that she's like, um, you know, in this culture, like we just deal with teenagers like, what the hell is wrong with you? Like, you're just wild, you're just acting up and whatever, like this teenage phenomenon, which actually did not exist until the 1940s. That was an invention, teenagers, for advertisers so they could separate their parents from their children and directly advertise to them more easily. Anyway, before that, you were just so and so son. You were not a teenager. But any case, so but she explains it like, you're just morphing it into the person that so you have stances, like you have a voice now that you want to put out in the community. You're getting a sense of what you're here to do, and you can't just do what someone tells you to do anymore. And
Mm-hmm.
she's like, the difference is here, there's no container for that process. So it just feels awful. Like no one, you know what I mean? What's wrong? There's just always some sort of headbutting or whatever. But in their culture, they create a container. Like, you're going to go wild. So we're just going to create a container. No, that's going to happen. And we're just going to let you do it. And we're going to watch you. And we're going to be here for you while you do that. And
Right.
she explains it like a blender. It's just like you got all these components and the process is violent. It's loud. It's all these things. But when it's done, because it had a container, you get this beautiful product.
Right. And that's why ritual has to be paired with study. And unfortunately, in America, it's often not.
Right.
Because when it comes to ritual by itself, it becomes addicting in the same way that you get your high and then you need it again too
Mm-hmm.
soon for your cycle, if you will. You need
Right.
it again too soon, and then you need it again, and then you need it's the same thing with Eastern yoga, let's say yoga.
Mm-hmm.
You go into it thinking it's a physical practice with spiritual benefits. You find out very soon it's a spiritual practice with physical benefits,
Mm-hmm.
which is a completely different ballgame.
Mm-hmm.
But and then as you get into it and sort of get deeper into it, and you start studying Reiki and not studying, you start getting into Reiki and you know all of these different, let's say Eastern um, things, and you start using words like source and universe and not to say that God is the only permissible word, but it's just foreign to you, right? Getting
Mm-hmm.
into these Eastern things,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not paired with study. You don't and so what happens is it becomes addictive and you make an idol out of the rituals.
That's
You forget that, and this is why I really love the Ten Commandments. They're
right.
just so unique. There's like hundreds of laws in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
The Ten Commandments, number one set, if you will, number one tarot cards, the Ten Commandments. Because commandment number two, don't make unto thee any graven image. Don't make any image out of it. Don't use voodoo, all due respect,
Mm-hmm.
to forget me and make it into this thing that you just need your fix and you just need to, oh, I just need to no. That's about me.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? That's about the unnameable, if you will. And just the practicality of the Ten Commandments, they're very interesting. All of them are very specific except for thou shalt not steal, because just don't. It's
Right.
not chores, just don't. Right? Thou shalt not
Mm-hmm.
murder. There's two words in Hebrew for taking a human life. One of them is like kill, one of them is like murder. Specifically, they use the word for murder. Thou shalt not murder. So killing for self-defense or wartime or something like that. All right, that's unique. That's a situation where it may call for it. you know, they're the genius in the Ten Commandments just amazes me. The more people that I listen to break them down in their interpretations, and I
Right.
think to bring it back to what you were saying, the Ten Commandments are a perfect container for ritual practice.
Right.
You know
100%. Yeah. And I think um to summarize our conversation here, I think that's a great way to understand that is there 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 needs to be a container so that there isn't a mess. There needs to
right?
be guiding posts so that there isn't a mess. There needs to be an alignment to divine source directly so that there isn't a mess.
Because we
And
be making a mess, yo.
just making a
Messing
mess.
around.
Making a mess. And that goes for every, we all know Christianity helped to enslave and also voodoo helped to enslave. Like all of it did that because of the lack of the lack of concern for the guideposts, the lack of concern for containers, the lack of concern for connectedness and oneness in the experience.
And to your earlier point about it all being God, and for the very real evidence that when you don't have concern for the edges of the container, this is what can happen.
This is what happened.
Right? So we wouldn't have the history to say, no, look, we already tried that.
Mm-hmm.
But we have the history because God knows what he's doing.
Right, right. And there's
He
forever.
got a the priestess. I have one more question for you before you go. It would not
Okay.
be the Expression of Love podcast if I did not ask you this question that I ask all of my guests. Please answer it fully. What is love to you at this stage of your life? What is love?
I've been asking myself that lately since I became a mother, actually. And love for me is a free energy source, is what it's surfacing for me. It's a free energy source that like my son loves himself naturally. He doesn't need me to love him. It blows my mind. You know what I mean? He doesn't actually need me to love him. He loves himself. He doesn't question how he moves or what he does. He doesn't look down on himself because he falls down. He doesn't have a sense of like, I'm small and you're big, so that means you're stronger and better. He doesn't have that. And so it's very clear, it's become very clear, much more clear to me that love is not something somebody can give you. It exists. If they share the love that they're experiencing with you, then that's something to cherish. It's something to truly cherish, because it's literally like it's like a kiss. It's like I have my own source of oxygen, but I'm sharing my source of oxygen with you, and you're sharing your source of oxygen with me. It's very tender in that way. And so love is just clear to me that it is a free source. It is just like the oxygen God gives you. It is God itself. No one can be like, I'm showing you, you can show me love, but you can't actually give it to me. It's already exists for me. And because I was so sure I had to love my baby. And I was like, oh no, he loves himself. Blew my mind.
Right. Not that you're not going to.
No, not that I'm not going to. I could. He's a little man, of course. Like I want to share.
Yeah.
What the love that
What
I'm.
a beautiful metaphor too with the kiss. I like that.
Yeah, it actually just came to me now. I never really thought about it that way.
So,
But I was thinking about the sharing of the love we have instead of Khalil Gibran has a whole thing on it. Okay, we need to wrap it up.
I'm not rushing you out the door.
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much for coming through the show. Would love to have you back. I want to have you and Shaka on,
Okay.
actually. Maybe all three of y'all, maybe, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know we're trying to keep Mbele away from the interwebs, but
No. I mean, a couple years. I plan on doing this for a while. You feel
all
me?
right. Yeah,
Plan on
once
doing this for
Mbele
a while. I gotta
you have something to say, I'm sure.
look, I always got something to say. You know what
Yeah,
I'm saying?
I love that. I
Big
love
hugs,
that.
Key.
That's
Thank you
important.
so very
Big
much.
hugs.
Oh
Peace
man.
and love.
Expressions of love.